In this training video, we're going to look at the use of nested functions, and in this example we're going to look at the use of nested functions using the if, the and the or functions in combination. So the scenario we've got here is identified in the blue block area, and what we're saying is training is required if the sales are less than 20,000 for sales from either Cardiff, Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam or Manchester. So if the sales happen to be less than 20,000 for any of those areas, there's training required. Now if the criteria is not matched, then we're going to leave the cell blank. So let's have a look at the data, how this works. So for example, if we look at cell E4, Cardiff happens to be less than 20,000, there should be the word training required in E4. If we look at another example, and we look at row 12, and we can see E12, well, Brussels is less than 20,000, that should be training required. And one more example, we'll look at row 23. Manchester happens to be less than 20,000. So there's going to be training required. So a criteria has been set by someone within the organization here to look at the business model, and they've decided that training is required for these particular areas if the sales are less than 20,000. Well, this is where the combination of the if, the and the or in this example are going to be really useful for making this work. So what you're going to see in column E from E4 downwards is either going to be training required, or if it doesn't hit the set criteria, for example, Boston, we're not testing Boston, that's going to just leave the cell blank in E5. So let's have a go at how this works together and the structure of it. So anytime I'm nesting a function and combining functions, I learn to write them. So I'm going to start off with equals, and then I'm going to type in if. So if allows me to set my parameter. Open a bracket, and now I'm going to look for the or part. Now why I'm using the or next is because I've got several or tests. So if I look at the amount of or tests I've got an or for Cardiff, which happens to be less than 20,000, or Paris, or Brussels, or Amsterdam, or Manchester. So the or here is critical to allow me to do multiple tests. So the or function is coming in. Now inside the or, I've got to now ask my ands. Now the and part of this is going to be, for example, Cardiff and less than 20,000. So let's have a go at this. So now's the and. Now I'm going to use the cells where I'm testing. So I'm testing city in units sold. So the first test is going to be C4. So you always test from the top of the list. And I'm asking the question, is it equal to Cardiff? And that goes in double inverted commas. Now you've got to know what a comma means when you're doing nested functions. So now put a comma in. So this comma is inside of the and function. So that actually means and. So this is saying, is C4 equal to Cardiff and, now D4, I'm testing for less than 20,000. Now when you finished your first and test, you close the bracket. So now that is my first and test. So I've tested for Cardiff and less than 20,000. But you'll notice I'm still in the or function. So Excel's been helpful in telling me I'm inside the or. So a comma now allows me to ask my next and. So you can see it says comma, logical, comma. So say every logical test inside an or needs a comma. So the comma, I'm now in the or, and now what I'm going to do, instead of finishing all the typing and typing and typing, I'm going to copy what's working. So I know from the and to the less than 20,000, and the comma is working. So I'm going to copy, and this is where I'm going to paste and just start changing things around a little bit. So this time, the next and, I'm not testing for Cardiff, I'm testing for Paris. So I'm just going to follow the text now. Now the next one, there's a comma already in place. So another paste. The next one's going to be Brussels. This is the thing when you're copying and pasting, you've got to look at making sure the pattern is working correctly. So that's Brussels covered, then Amsterdam, and the last one is going to be Manchester. Okay, now the comma that I copied originally is not needed now. So this last comma here means that I'm going on and on. So the comma, I'll just highlight it in the formula bar. That last comma is now not needed because I've finished all my ands. So what I've said so far is, if OR allows me to ask multiple scenarios. Now within the OR, I've got the first and the and is asking for, is C4 equal to Cardiff, and the comma means D4 is less than 20,000. Then I'm repeating for Paris, for Brussels, for Amsterdam, and for Manchester. So I've done all my repeats now against my question. I have to put a bracket now instead of that comma because that bracket closes the OR. So that now finishes off the OR. It tells me now I'm back into the if for my logical test. So if all of that happens, and that's true, the comma then means then. Then what do I want? Well, I want to see training required. So I'm going to put that in double inverted commas. And if none of that's to happen, I must leave the cell blank, as it tells me in the instruction. And blank is 2 inverted commas. Now, sometimes this gets confusing with the amount of brackets open and closing. So you've got to know now what brackets are open, what brackets are closed. So my OR is closed off with the second bracket. All my ands are closed off as I'm going along. So there's no ands open. There's only one bracket left to close, and that's for the if. So one bracket, enter. And like we said earlier on, training required because Cardiff is less than 20,000. If I now double click, you can see loads of training required. So this is the way you go about structuring a nested function. Depends on the scenario you're writing in. In this case, I was structuring a nested if and an or with a level of 4 ands inside of an or. So that was quite a involved use of if and an or, but this is the way you structure it. So what you try and do, you try and get one part working correctly, and then you start copying. If I break this down a little bit, just to try and explain it a little bit more, I'll just put in a comma. It could be on a single inverted comma, and this turns it into text. So I'm just gonna quickly make this a little bit bigger so we can look at the detail of this a bit more. And there's a useful feature whereby you can press Alt and Enter in the formula bar to make things stand out a little bit easier to follow. So I'm just going to break this down a little bit so we can look at it a little bit more detail, a bit more. And I'm going to extend the formula bar. Okay, so if we have a look at the breakdown now, and we can now look at how this is structured. So the test was, if means you're asking a scenario, the or allowed me to ask lots of ors for the different cities, and the city had to have less than 20,000. So the or has an open bracket, then comes my first and. So my first and tests the C4, which is the first cell, and tests Cardiff, and then the comma there means and D4 is less than 20,000. So that's the first and tested. You close the bracket. The next comma means or. So that comma is inside of the or. And then the next and goes again. So and C4 equals Paris. And D4 is less than 20,000. Or C4 equals Brussels. And D4 is less than 20,000. Or. So the commas now are meaning ors. Next one, C4 equals Amsterdam. The comma there means and. D4 is less than 20,000. Or. The final and, C4 equals Manchester. And D4 is less than 20,000, there's two brackets. So the two brackets, the first bracket closes the AND, the last bracket closes the OR. Now the comma next to the second bracket means then, if all of that is then applicable, the last comma means then, training's required. The final comma means otherwise, leave it blank. And there you go for a structure of a nested if, or, an and to a level of 4 ands within an if and an or. So this shows you the structure of nested functions. It does take a bit of practice. It does take a little bit of playing around with, but commas and brackets and the logic of what you're trying to test are very important in this kind of way of working. So this now completes a nested test of if, and or functions, in this example to a level of 4 ands.